Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, welcoming you to Hot Seat number 5, Part 2, the social media woes of an emerging classical music activist. Kyle Walker is in the hot seat. He's on the show today to work through creating a unique career as both a pianist and an activist. Kyle is passionate about classical musicians using their performances as a medium for forwarding important issues that we currently deal with around the world. Things like racism, diversity, politics, and the like. Much of the discussion centers around how to view and use social media to build an audience as well as relate to your audience. Today, we complete the conversation we started with Kyle. I hope you see value in applying this advice as you build your own presence online. Before we begin, a couple of quick things. Please join the conversation at facebook.com/crushingclassical as well as Crushing Classical on Instagram. If you love our content, it would mean the world to us for you to comment and share it with your classical musician friends and colleagues. Okay, let's get started.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how you avoid alienating. You don't need to alienate. You can stand for an ideal instead of... The reason why so much activism doesn't work is because everybody wants to be on a side. I don't ever want to be on a side. I'll tell you, I want to lead the inquiry for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal. I want to lead the inquiry for both sides. That's all I'm suggesting you do here is you lead an inquiry. And by the way, every time you go and play piano and you do it in an activist way like you did with Bach to Black Notes, every time you do that, you can be leading an inquiry. Because actually, all points of view are valid.
Mm-hmm.
Charlottesville is a tragic thing, and all points of view are valid. Like you could, and that is a place to stand.
Mm-hmm.
And you see what I'm saying? Like that
Sure.
is an inquiry to lead. Like, we are not going to improve this world by being against each other. Mm-hmm. We have to we have to lift the conversation up higher. Sure. There's a conversation above, I'm white supremacist or I'm anti-fascist. There is something far higher than those two conversations. Those are two low-level conversations.
Yeah, because no one's going to ever be deemed the right ones.
Nope.
No one.
There's not a right one.
That never happens.
There's not a right one. See, and what's funny is I'm not in either one of those conversations. I believe in being a good human and training people to think of being a good human first, above all things. Mm-hmm. That's all I care about in this world.
Yeah, and I think it also, what you're saying, speaks to how people don't want to be preached to. You know, it's like you're not going to change anybody's stance by just getting really angry and sharing your opinion about it. Right. But if you encourage them to take a stand on it, then it gets them to actually think about what they think.
That's right.
And, that's
exactly, you totally got it. It's about getting people to think about what they think.
Right.
That's all you're doing. I recommend leading that conversation.
Yeah.
Because mostly what we have right now, Kyle, is people who just don't think.
Exactly.
All they do is react.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's all they do. They just
true.
react. And that's why the world doesn't work, actually.
Right.
It's not even that, one side versus another side. It's the reaction. Mm-hmm. It's that we don't listen to each other at all.
Right.
Yeah, and you post something on Charlottesville, worst case scenario, nobody says anything. Best case scenario, what is it? A ton of people say they agree with you, and some people say they don't agree with you, and then you've got like that thread on your page, and we've gotten nowhere. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's what's happening on social media today. Is somebody's posting, and then you've got everybody chiming in, swearing at each other, and it's terrible.
Trying to be right, and no one's ever right, and then it's just a mess. Yeah.
And in the meantime, nothing is getting forwarded, including in their own lives.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just having their keyboard warriors on social. So does that make sense? Like I'm inviting you to lead a larger conversation, a bigger conversation, a higher conversation, and figure out what your categories are. Like, what are the categories? There's perception. There's strongly held beliefs. I'm making this up, obviously. There's different aspects of activism. There's also different aspects of performance activism. And by the way, darling, I don't know if you realize this, but you can totally... you can coin a vocabulary word, performance activism, if it doesn't exist. you can you can coin the phrase and you can lead the conversation for that phrase. So every time somebody thinks of Kyle, whatever your last name is, they
Walker,
think of performance activism. Look, my goal, let's just put it out there right now. My goal is that every time somebody thinks the name Tracy Friedlander, they think Crushing Classical. Tracy Friedlander, Crushing Classical. If they are not putting those two things together, we're not doing our job.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I'm not even lying to you. That is exactly what my goal is over here, because I want her name to be synonymous with Crushing. Why can't my name be synonymous with it? Because I'm not a musician. That's why. Mm-hmm. I'm a contributor here. I'm in the business world. I do business stuff, and look, I love business. It's great. I have a lot to add here, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not the musician. The reason why Tracy has to be the face here is because she's a musician. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to do what makes sense. But at the end of the day, my goal, no bones about it. My goal is, people think Tracy Friedlander, they'll go, oh, that's that girl from Crushing Classical, right?
Sure.
Yeah. She's got that podcast, right? That's what I want. I want everybody in the classical world to know her. That I don't care if they know she's a horn player. That doesn't matter to me. And Kyle, frankly, I don't care if people know that you're a pianist. What I care about is they have your name synonymous with performance activism, or whatever that vocabulary word is you decide to own and lead. That's because I promise you're going to make a bigger impact in this world. And of course, that's my goal. You're going to make a bigger impact in this world by being a performance activist than you ever will being a pianist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hands down.
Right. And I think the part that, well, I don't know if I want other people to realize it, but perhaps what you're getting at is me realizing that doesn't mean that I'm not a pianist. It's just that's not going to set myself up for reaching a wider audience or making a change in the world, as you're saying. It's like, an old teacher of mine said that you could go to Central Park and shake a tree and like 500 pianists that could play rock too would fall out. And, and it's like, but what are you doing to make a change in the world? And that's what I'm really interested in.
Right. And musicians need someone standing for, hey, you can speak your mind. You're allowed to.
And I love this, by the way. I love your angle. I love the whole thing. I mean, I think it rocks. And
great.
I really want you to win. And by the way, just Tracy, can we just have a little moment? Don't you feel like you're hearing yourself last year?
Yes.
Because this was Tracy last year. She was having little mini meltdowns over but Eileen, I'm still a horn player. Like, she was serious. Yeah. You gotta say what happened, Tracy, just for the hell. You just gotta say, because I feel like I'm talking to little Tracy right now. I really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I know that I'm always going to be a horn player, but every now and then I would get scared. Oh my God, Eileen, I'm still a horn player. I'm still a musician. I still play the horn. I don't want to stop performing. Every now and then I would have a mini freak out about it because I wanted to make sure that she knew.
It happened a lot. And she was like, but Eileen, I don't want to stop being a horn player. And I said to her, did I tell you had to stop being a horn player? And she'd go, no. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? She just really had this identity crisis she didn't have it anymore, but she had it last year. I mean,
I did. It was because our training is just that we are what we play.
Our instrument, absolutely.
So deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. This is such a good conversation for you. I love that you're a musical activist. I love that I've never talked to anyone like you. So it's so cool that, I feel really fortunate that you came on this hot seat, but really, I mean, I really do. But I would love for the world to know who you are. And I would love for you to let that happen. I really would. Like, let it happen. If you're willing, just give up your need to control the perception.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking to before, when you were talking about Australia and you said, well, is it still relevant because it already happened in the past? I say absolutely. And then going forward, you can document what you're doing because, in real time. Hey, now I'm in this country, or I'm
I mean, Tracy's about to post some stuff about Beijing that happened how long ago? When was that?
I was there in 2004, so that was a long time ago.
She was there in 2004. It's like 2017. Yeah. She's about to post. She's going to do a little series. It's going to be cool. I mean, you should watch it. She's going to do a series of posts, and it's going to be great. I mean, Tracy's got so many great stories. I just
but
can't
you
even
helped
tell
me
you
think of a good one today, Kyle, because I totally forgot about my walk. My walk to rehearsal every day, I had to walk by construction sites. And I mean, the whole city is always under construction, or at least it was back then. Mm-hmm. But they didn't have any machines. They just had like thousands of people doing things by hand. And
wow.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, they're just hammering away, and I would walk by,
That's
and
so
they
fascinating.
would stop what they were doing and just look.
There.
And it wasn't like they were checking me out, like, "Hey, lady," like in New York.
Right.
They were stopping to be like, why are you walking right there? Who are you? Like, why are you even here? Because I lived in an area that wasn't really touristy at all. Like, there were no Americans there.
Yeah.
So it was
Wow.
funny.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you have some really great stories, but I'm going to remind you again what I said earlier. If you didn't write it, you can listen back to this call. But
Sure.
people only care about your stories as it relates to their life, as it relates to them. So it's not that your stories don't matter. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that people are incredibly selfish. Human beings are incredibly selfish, and they're always looking for the value in it for themselves. And if you can show that, if you can provide that, if you can use a story to show them something, then you become instantly valuable to them.
Right. And
Instantly.
so I hate running things through, say, like a one size fits all approach, but is there something that you could advise that would be applicable to at least the majority of situations? So say I'm sharing a story about something that happened to me a month ago or something. How would you then turn that and as you said, I guess, make it relate to the audience or make it feel like that story is also a part of them?
Well, a really good example would be that the thing we were just talking, because it depends on first of all, there is no one size fits all, you're right. And it depends on the person and the story. So for example, when you were in Australia and I asked you about, what you got out of that trip, one of the things you talked about was, what was the first thing you said? Hold on. I can't
Just
remember.
being black in Australia is not like being
black. Yeah. So that was, instantly. So that's a takeaway for them. So it fits to, there's a like a narrative there. The narrative is, first of all, you're openly, what's great about it is you're black and you're openly talking about this issue of racism, which is really big and and because we're in such a divided country right now.
Right.
In every way. That would be really, it's always interesting, I think, when black people talk about being black, because it's such a quote unquote taboo topic. So there's that piece of it, but the other piece of it is what you expected versus what you got. And there's something they take away from that for themselves. There is something that they take away. When you talk about something you learned or something you got out of an experience. So that's a good example. Give me a recent example of something that happened. It doesn't have to be magical. It could be, I don't know. Just give me a recent example of something that happened. I'm going to help you try and locate this for yourself.
Concerning, like, race or?
Nope. Just in your life. I know that you're having trouble with this question right now because you really do believe that your life is not interesting. I mean, the number one battle that everybody faces, everyone who's listening to this call, is that you genuinely think your life isn't interesting, and that is actually why you're having a problem with this. Because you've forgotten that the mundane part of your life that isn't interesting is actually very interesting to somebody else.
Right.
So give me an example of something.
That kind of explains reality TV right there in a nutshell,
It does. I mean, look at reality TV. Look at the obsession with it. We watch people live on TV, and we call each other and snicker and make jokes about it and talk about it on social. Right? So just give me a recent something that happened. I don't know. Just give me an example. Something.
Oh gosh. Oh geez.
It can be non-music related. I don't care.
I mean, you live in New York. Stuff happens there all the time, right?
I was going to say, you live in the most interesting place in the world.
Like busy coffee shop. What? There was someone we follow on social that had a funny as hell story about being in a coffee shop and putting his laptop down, or not laptop, but probably put his bag down. And then someone was there when he came back, and he's like, "What the hell?"
Well, and it's really, and by the way, he's turned this into a storyline. So actually, this is a great example. Do you mind if I expand on it? Tracy? It's a really good example. So that's such a great example. I'm glad you brought that up. So this guy, he's hilarious. He lives in New York City, and he goes to coffee shops to work. And so he turned this into a series because one day he posted about the fact that he went to the coffee shop, he put his bag down at a table with his laptop, and he went to the counter to go get a coffee, right? And he comes back and he finds that his bag has been moved. And so what does he do? He takes a picture and he tells the story of what he did. Like he actually he looked at the woman who was sitting in the seat and said, "What are you doing? That's my table." And he tells the story of what he did about it, and he got massive response. Well, now that has turned into, I'm not kidding you, like stories from a coffee shop. Like he even went, I'm not joking, he even went and ordered a sign that says reserved, and he walks into coffee shops and he puts reserved on his table. I kid you not. He puts a reserved sign on the table, and it's like part of the narrative. It's one of the narratives that he keeps going on his timeline all the time.
I love the narrative idea, because then they come back and you're like, "Ooh, the next part of the story."
It's all about narratives.
Yeah.
It's all about narratives. Like, that is a narrative. It's an ongoing narrative in his life. Why? Because he goes almost every day to a coffee shop to work. That's just part of his lifestyle. So he doesn't post about it all the time, but whenever it comes up, there is this band of people who know about his coffee shop stories, and they're like, "Oh, look, he's posted another one about a coffee shop." Like, everybody just loves it, right?
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. I watch a health and fitness couple, and they have a little, it's like a little farm. It's not a farm, but they have animals. Okay, they have like goats and chickens okay. So anyway, a couple years back, 3 years ago, they found a baby deer that was, I think it was hurt. I can't remember exactly what happened. So anyway, they decided to bring, I don't know I can't remember the whole story of what happened, but they brought him back to their house and they nursed him to health. Like, there was, so I don't know what was wrong with him, but, and they named him Benjamin. Benjamin, the deer. And so, I'm not kidding you. I go, and Tracy knows this, like, she probably thinks I'm an idiot, because every single time I go on there and they post about Ben, I'm like, "You got to go look at their stories today. They've got Ben. Ben showed up." Like, because Ben doesn't live with them, but he goes out into the forest, because they live in a forest area. And then every once in a while he comes back. And for like 3 weeks, he wasn't coming back. And everybody was worried because they weren't posting about him. And even they would go on their stories and say, "We don't know where Ben is. We haven't seen him for like 3 weeks. We hope he didn't get killed. We hope he's okay, blah, blah, blah." About a month later, Ben finally shows up. I mean, I practically did a jig in my living room when Ben showed up again, because I love that storyline. So they have different narratives that they're running, but I'm all about the Ben narrative. They also had a narrative. Their dog recently died. They had a pit bull. He had liver failure, but that was a narrative as well. And they ended up taking him on a trip across America. And they sold shirts, actually, they got him at a rescue, like a pit bull rescue. And so what they did was they sold shirts, Debo Does America. Well, that was the name of the dog. And so they took him on a 3-week trip across to their property in Montana, and then they drove back. But they had a whole series on that, and they ended up raising, I don't know, $250,000 or something for this pit bull rescue, selling these shirts, Debo Does America. I'm not joking. And so that was another narrative. And then, of course, Debo died, and now that narrative is over. Right? So do you see what I'm like? You got to look at what the narratives are. There are themes, there are narratives that are happening in your life, and people want to be part of that story. Like, every time I don't see Ben in the stories, I get so disappointed. Like, "Oh, they didn't post about Ben today." And that's so stupid, but it makes me, and I'm sure Tracy is over there like rolling her eyes, because I'm constantly talking about Ben.
Well, she'll text me like a random, "Ben is back. Did you see?"
Go see. And she's probably over there, and I don't know what she thinks about it. It doesn't matter to me, because I'm so excited about Ben, right?
I do love Ben, though. For the long time, I was like, okay, whatever, they have a deer. And then I actually went on the stories on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh, he's so cute."
He's so cute, and he's growing little horns now, or what do they call them?
Antlers.
Yeah, right. So he's growing little antlers. Look at me. I don't even know what they are. He's growing little antlers. Not like he's growing up now, and he came back after his month-long trip. He was gone. Like, there was he became a man.
He became a man.
His back. Like, he got a cut on his back. And so that's part of the story too now, is we're all trying to figure out what happened to his back. Why does he have this cut on his back? And so, like, I think he probably just got cut on a fence or something, is my guess. But you see do you get where I'm going with this? There's narratives.
Sure.
So let's look at yours just really quick. Well, let's look at your narratives. What's a narrative that's playing out in your life on a pretty regular basis?
I had one, but then I realized that it doesn't have a recurring factor of it. And maybe I noticed that that's kind of the trend of what you were saying, is that some of these have
So
recurring
you're
events.
already, instead of telling me what it is, you're
Right, I
you're
know.
trying to prove to me how it's not going to work.
And that's the problem.
It doesn't
That's
have to
what's
be
like,
recurring. What did you
yeah.
think of?
Oh, I was just thinking of how the other day I was watching this fight, this big McGregor, what was it? The other guy. Um,
Yep.
the fight that was happening that was so big, and I was like, I don't watch sports. Like, I don't watch fights. And actually, I was telling Tracy about this in our messages prior to this podcast that, like, I was watching it with another friend that was also also a guest on the show, and which is funny because it was just like, oh, that's a funny coincidence.
Yeah,
But
totally.
it's like, I guess he's more into sports, but I'm like, I don't watch sports, but sure, I'll come over and hang out and watch this fight. And I'm like, that's so interesting. This is a fight that I'm really into right now. Boxing versus MMA fighting. And then, 3 days before that, I was visiting my parents in Florida and went to an NFL game. And I'm like, I don't go to NFL games. Like, I don't even follow football. It's like, oh, but this is so fascinating just to observe the culture. I still don't like it, but this is like, suddenly I'm like being included in this sports world in this way.
And so here's what's interesting about that is, it's amazing how if you think about it, like I'm looking at it in a contextual way, it's amazing how the hype about something will draw you into the narrative.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and
how that happens.
It's funny because when it comes to sports and say NFL, part of what I don't like about it is that aspect of it. It's the fact that everybody is just so into it. And it's like at the end of the day, you're just into people like running into each other, and it's a lot of violence. Like, what's so fascinating about that? But then I guess my take on it is, well, I'm this classical musician, and most classical musicians, we're not really that much into sports. And it's like, oh, suddenly I find certain aspects of it fascinating. And I'm like, wow, I feel like such an outsider as a musician talking about sports.
Okay, and let me give you another view. Let's be clear what sports is, what games are. They are a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
And you have distractions too.
Yeah.
They're just not football.
Right.
So what are your distractions?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and then you could ask your audience, what are your distractions? What do you like?
This fidget spinner that I'm playing with right now.
Okay. And I've seen them, but I've never had one. But so, yeah, I mean, like that could be one. Maybe you play, I don't know, computer games.
Maybe I'm totally into aviation. Flight simulation is my thing. So I'm constantly playing this flight simulator on my iPad. And when people see it, they're like, "What? You're crazy. What are you doing?" Like, and I'm like so into it.
So how they feel about flight simulation is the same way you feel about football. They're like, "Why would you do that, man?" And you're like,
it's just such a geeky thing. I'm just
it's just everybody's got distractions, right? And so that happens to be yours. Okay, so let's pick. So one of your narratives could be your study of flight simulation. That could be a narrative.
Sure.
What's another one? Do you have are you like obsessed with walking your dog? Is there anything, what?
Is there anything you do every single day?
Yeah. Something you do consistently?
Besides practicing?
I make coffee every day.
Okay.
What kind?
So that's that's a ritual.
Coffee every day. Yeah.
Right.
Are
so
you
that's
like a real coffee geek? Do you like to grind your beans? Do you get fair trade, organic, shade grown? Okay, yeah. How do you make it?
Do you have a fit? Do you have a fit when you go to the coffee shop and they don't have your flavor? I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of stuff. It's that's a narrative. And by the way, the coffee narrative is a big narrative for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And they have opinions about it.
And you being a coffee connoisseur, if you will, or somebody who prides himself on the beans he uses and how he does it, and maybe you do different methods. Maybe sometimes you do a pour over, sometimes you do a right. Are you one of those?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that's a really great example of a narrative.
Yeah,
that's a great example of a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know you don't think that's interesting, but I have to tell you, I got really obsessed with the pour over when I lived in Denver, and now. I am still looking for a coffee shop in Phoenix that can do a proper pour over without burning the grounds.
Right.
Which is hard to do because if you don't get the water just the right temperature, you will burn the grounds and it will taste burnt.
Sure. And people don't always think of that sort of thing, even in coffee shops.
Exactly. They don't.
They aren't
testing the temperature of the water, and if they're not doing that, they're going to burn it.
The same
right?
thing with French press. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's another thing. French press. I've never really cared for French press because it cools off too quickly.
Mm.
I just don't
It
like,
does cool off quickly.
yeah, you can get one pour and that's all you can get because that thing just cools off in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's why I gave up on French press, even though like I love the idea of it, but the function of it doesn't work for me. But see, now I'm nerding out with you on freaking coffee narrative. Like that's, see what but that's a really
and that
good
sparks
example.
a conversation. People want to weigh in. Everyone's passionate about their morning coffee or tea or whatever they do, and they want to talk about it.
Exactly. They're going to be equally interested in some of these nerdy aspects of you and what I'm inviting you. Like, I know you're like, oh, this is not interesting. My life is mundane. That's not mundane. That's actually part of what makes you interesting is the fact that you nerd out on that. You know, Tracy's husband is kind of a connoisseur of violins and bows. And he studies that a lot, and he nerds out.
Oh my God!
Stuff.
Like I'll open up the iPad and I'm zoomed in on a bow, like on the tip of a bow.
Yeah, he's
like
looking at the
zoomed
tip of the and she's like, "What is this?"
I call it violin porn because it's like
violin porn, exactly. And there's like thousands of people that would love to nerd out with David about that.
Yeah,
sure. They would love to nerd out. And listen, I don't want to nerd out. You know those two fitness people I was telling you about, Benjamin? Do I want to sit and talk with them because they're power lifters and bodybuilders and whatnot? Like they do health and fitness and they're really great lifters and I do powerlifting. Mm-hmm. And so do I want to nerd out with them about powerlifting? Actually, no. I want to talk about Ben. Mm-hmm. You know, and actually, like if I ever had a chance to go visit Ben, like I would drop everything for a chance to go visit Ben.
Right.
And that's so stupid, but it's real and it's human.
Right.
Right.
So I guess my thing right now that I'm thinking is to become more aware of what good narratives are. It's much easier to, for example, be in a conversation like this. Obviously, with you who thinks about this stuff and who's really good at determining, you know, the narrative in something. So, is there something that you would recommend? Maybe like finding a person that's good, like maybe like because my wife is better at. Like she shares things on Facebook all the time. So would you recommend that I kind of like consult with her or something, you know, to see if something is narrativable? I don't know if that's a word, but I mean, because the problem is when I'm by myself, obviously you can tell right now, when I'm thinking by myself, I'm just going to talk myself out of everything. So I'm
clear about that. No. Yeah, you've proven that really well. So, you prove that really well because, like, you try to talk me out of your genius, you know, I don't know how many times on this call, which is sweet. It's human. So two things to answer your question. Number one is I recommend, and, you know, I'm going to be loud and proud about it. I think you should follow Tracy, first of all.
On the Crushing Classical page or...
and also her personal, like you should become friends with her. If you're not already, you should become friends with her, or you can follow her.
I'll friend request you.
Yeah, she'll friend request you.
I'm gonna be playing this out real time on my.
You're gonna be playing it out in real time. You're gonna get to see what Tracy does, and you should know that there's a method, yes, and I am definitely a part of what we are putting out. I'm absolutely part of what's being published.
Yes.
Tracy and I both are. It's a group effort. Right, Tracy?
Yeah, it is. Certainly is. Yes,
absolutely. You know, two of us working together on what we are posting, and believe me, we put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah. So in that way, it isn't bad to feel like it's like crafted, because I think that's the perception that I always have is like, oh, people just come up with this amazing post, and I'm like, I'm not able to think of these things so quickly, but. Is that just a misconception that things are way more crafted than they appear on social media? You know what? It's funny. I think some people's social media is crafted, and I think other people are just really good at telling stories. Yeah. You know, if there's one thing you want to become great at, it's telling stories. And if I have to say anything about what Crushing Classical, which you should scroll our feed and take a look at what we've posted in the last, year. And then also, I mean, you're welcome to scroll our feed, but also, you're going to start seeing a bunch from Tracy on her personal page. There is definitely, there's certainly a strategy to it, but there's just learning how to tell a great story. And it's something that I've been working with Tracy on for a long time now.
And it's something I know how to do very well. And so part of you getting better at it is being exposed to it, just being exposed to someone who's doing it very well. And we are doing it. I mean, again, I'm just going to say it. We're doing it very well.
Yeah, I'm looking at Tracy's right now, and I'm just scrolling down. I'm just like, all of your posts have legitimate replies. You're asking a question. You said, are you a morning person or a night owl? And everybody's replying like morning, night owl. It's like total engagement.
But
I love it.
And do you know why that happened? Because there's such a there you live in two camps. You're either a morning person and you're proud of it, or you're a night owl and you're proud of it.
Yeah.
Part of what worked about that post was that it's a narrative that everybody, 100% of people deal with. So it hit 100% of the audience because everybody deals with it. And by the way, the coffee narrative does the same thing. You're hitting 100% of the audience because there's the people who love coffee and think it's amazing, and there's everybody who's like, y'all who drink coffee are idiots. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. Another one, you can look at the broken stand meme. I don't know if you saw the meme that we posted. I don't know, it was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. It's what did it say again? I can't remember.
It's actually on my profile. If you just scroll down a little bit more, because I shared it to that. It says, it's the most interesting man in the world from Dos Equis beer.
Dos Equis, yeah.
And I put on there, I don't always show up to rehearsal early, but when I do, it's because I traded your good stand with my broken one.
Yeah.
and listen, like that hit 100% of the classical music audience.
On my page here, it got 3 comments, but on Crushing Classical, it got like 900 comments.
I mean, wow. And we had like over 1,000 shares, 1,200 shares, 1,300 shares. I mean, it was insane. But that's the whole thing is part of what we think about posting is what percentage of the audience is it hitting. Something about coffee is going to hit 100% of the audience because there's for and against. Something about morning person versus night owl is going to hit 100% of the audience because there's for and against.
Yeah, and not every post is going to nail it every time.
Not everybody. Yeah, I mean, we posted another meme with Robert Downey Jr. that talked about waiting 137 bars of rest to come in, and then the conductor stops. That doesn't hit any string players, but it hits every.
Oh, I saw that one. That hit me too.
Yeah,
right. As a pianist playing with orchestra sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly. Harpist. A lot of harpists replied. That's what I'm saying, though. It's like part of how I want you to think of. There's a little bit of art in this, and there's a little bit of science in it.
Yeah.
When I think about social media and how I think about it is about audience. Mm-hmm. It's about what percentage of the audience am I going to hit. If I'm only going to hit like 5% of the audience, I'm not going to post it. Yeah. I'm just not, because I'm trying to get I don't have to hit 100% of the audience all the time, but what's the most likely response I'm going to get is if I can hit 50% of the audience, 60% of the audience. That's what I'm looking for, like in the stories. And certain things that you talk about, like going overseas to Australia, you're going to hit the target audience, everybody who's been to Australia, everybody who wants to go to Australia, and everybody who, you see what I'm saying? You're hitting different audiences in what you speak about. And that's part of, there's a little bit of science to it.
So the perception is that it's easy, but the reality is that it's not. But it's not impossible. It's just that it requires more thought than how it comes off when people are just Yeah,
and here's what I'm going to tell you. I know that it's in your nature, because you're a classical musician. I know it's in your nature to go into a room and study this before you do it.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to teach you. I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to go and find your page, first of all, because Tracy knows what it is.
Yes.
You're kind of screwed. And so I'm going to find it. And I want to see you do one post a day. And I want you to just start with, it could be an Australia post, like the thing we talked about Australia. We've already come up with a couple or two or three different post ideas for you.
Okay, yeah.
I actually want you to publish those. All you need is one a day. You don't need more than, but do one a day, and think about also. So that's your first assignment, is do one a day. I don't want you to overthink this. I don't want you to plan it. I don't want you to do anything like that. I just want you to do one post a day. And yes, we're going to be watching. And then also, it kind of sucks to be you, because it's happening. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to think about what vocabulary word you could coin for yourself. Performance activist, performance activism.
Mm-hmm.
Go look and see if anything like that exists right now. Go on Google and see if the word performance activism or performance activist or classical music activist or classical music performance activist or whatever. Go see if any of that exists, and I want you to decide, I want you to think about what term you want to claim for your work.
Sure.
And by the way, how you claim something is you consistently use it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can even make a hashtag out of it. You have to look and see if that hashtag exists, but you can, that's how you do it, is you claim it for yourself by using it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, first making sure it doesn't exist and being used by somebody else, but using it, making a hashtag out of it, that's really how you claim. And that's how people, again, Tracy Friedlander, Crushing Classical. That if there's anything I'm doing right now, it is forwarding that quote unquote brand or that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's I want her name synonymous with Crushing Classical. That is what I want. That is my goal.
Right. Okay. So just one other question about that. I think in terms of growing an audience, like practically speaking, my fan page on Facebook, I've had it for a couple of years, but it started off by obviously just me inviting friends because that's how you have to start it. And then it kind of like flatlined at a certain. I think so. I mean, in terms of who you invite, sure, you can have it out there, but you have to get traction from somewhere. So you start with your network of people you're already friends with and invite them to like the page. But I guess since it kind of flatlined at maybe a couple hundred likes.
Sure.
I know I have like a couple thousand friends though. So and I see with Tracy, you're reposting a lot of the same things from Crushing Classical on your, I guess you'd call it your personal page.
Yeah, I do that.
Oh, shares. Yeah.
So would you recommend always doing that? Because I guess.
I mean, there's a little strategy there. So the first thing you should know is that, when Tracy was getting, this is part of her strategy. When Tracy was getting likes on Crushing Classical, I said, you should friend those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she started out with, how many friends did you start out with last year, Tracy? Do you remember?
Oh, I didn't have, I think I had around 500 friends, maybe 450 or something. I think I have like over 800.
Mm-hmm.
She has over 800 now. So, and she probably hasn't been doing that either full time. Like she could probably even go further than she's gone.
I can,
she can do way more inviting people to be her friends. So one strategy that works actually very well is to, when you have a page and somebody likes your page, ask them to be your friend on Facebook.
Especially Kyle, we have everyone has so many mutual friends in the classical world. Like you're going to start getting likes and then you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, we have like 50 mutual friends."
Right.
That's right.
Right.
And listen, organic reach is not very good on your page. And so one of the reasons why I think it's a good idea to do both, like Tracy's doing, is using her personal profile as well as Crushing Classical page, is because if they're friends with her and they like the page, they're going to see her one place or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they're going to see her posting one place on her personal profile, or they're going to see her posting on the page. We don't know what they're going to see because organic reach, we don't know. I mean, organic reach is very, very low right now. It's like 1% or 2%, which means every time you post on your page, 1 or 2% of your followers are actually seeing it.
I see. And what do you mean by organic?
Organic means that it's showing up in their news feed.
Without you paying for it.
Without you paying for it. Without you paying for it. And you don't get to control that. Facebook does.
Yeah, like some posts will get like 100 views or whatever, but then other ones will get like 6.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Facebook, we don't get to decide that. That's why pages are such a good choice, because you can actually advertise.
Sure.
You can use advertising dollars to get further. And that's what Facebook wants you to do.
Yeah.
They definitely want you to do that. And we have done that, and we are doing that. And so that would be another, so yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do is when somebody likes a post or likes something that we do, Tracy friends them.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's part of audience building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I recommend using your personal profile and your page both. And you can use them in different ways, and you can kind of see what we're doing. We try different things out. Especially in the last 3 months, we have experimented a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We really have. I mean, I'm not saying that there's no exact formula here,
mm-hmm.
but I'm just giving you some guidelines. So, but what I really want you to do, though, is get out of the study of it and get into the practice of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
That's the biggest advice I can give you is you're not going to get better by watching only. You're going to get better by watching and doing.
Mm-hmm.
So watch us and do.
Sure.
And keep the idea of narratives in mind. Keep the idea of, notice the posts that get traction and notice the ones that don't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can watch and see.
Yeah.
You can watch and see like what we're doing and you'll get an idea. And start to think in the way that I'm talking about, which is percent of audience. Percent of your audience, what are they going to respond to? What hits 100% of the audience? What hits...
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, definitely.
Coffee hits 100% of the audience because you either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Getting up in the morning or staying up at night, that's going to hit 100% of the audience because you either love it, like you're either a morning person or you're a night owl and you're right about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, kids, if you post anything about kids or children or anything like that, that's going to hit a very large part of the audience because there's a lot of people who love parenting. They love kids, Same thing with animals. That's why animal posts go so far because everybody who doesn't love dogs, people who don't love dogs have problems.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest. And so, and then there's the whole dog versus cat debate.
Sure.
Right? You're either a dog person or you're a cat person, and you're right.
Yeah.
Right? And so again, that's 100% hit. That narrative is a 100% hit. Right?
Yeah.
By the way, do you have a dog?
I have a cat. Her name is Nina Simone.
Okay,
and
great.
Obviously, she was named after Nina Simone, the activist.
That's great. And by the way, that's another narrative. People
awesome.
will love. People would love to meet Nina Simone. They would love to see her. They would love to see her antics. Nina Simone can be a narrative, just like Benjamin the deer is a narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
I bet she plays. Does she play the piano?
Occasionally, she'll dabble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be, again, that's a narrative, and all the cat people, and I'm one of them. I'm a cat person. I have a cat too. People will love that.
Yeah.
People will love that narrative. And so, and Nina has, quirks.
Right. She's like a dog, basically. She'll lick you all day.
There you go. And like my cat loves to fight, and I call it kitty MMA. That's what I call it. I always joke about the fact that every day I do a little kitty MMA. We've got a little fight going on the mattress kind of thing. And she's extremely, she loves kitty MMA. But people would love that narrative. They would love that I have these little brawls with my cat. Like they would love that, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I know you think your life is mundane, but as mundane as you think it is, they're going to love that she's called Nina Simone and that she does all of her little antics.
Yeah.
They will love that. And so I just want you to get comfortable with that your life as an open book is actually very interesting.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I really want to know more about Nina Simone and that Australia story.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear about your pour over travails over there because,
Yeah.
Teach me how to teach somebody in an espresso shop to do it properly. Thank you very much. I've not found one place in Phoenix that does a pour over correctly. Not one.
Yeah.
And I live in the city. Let's be clear. So you see what I mean? Like, if you can just get comfortable and just give up the perception, tell your story. Tell your story and. Be an activist and lead a conversation. I can't stress that enough. You must lead a conversation. The reason why Crushing Classical is going to make it or not is entirely dependent on that we continue to lead a conversation.
Right.
It's entirely dependent on that. And if we don't do that, we'll be a flash in the pan for this audience.
Yeah.
We'll be a flash in the pan. And I'm committed that we are not a flash. I'm committed we're the opposite of a flash in the pan.
Yeah. And you're also making me think about the relationship with video with this as well, just thinking about like how media works and how, certain media outlets are way more popular than others because they're doing what you're saying. They're basically leading audiences, which people may have a problem with. Like people may think that Fox is going one way, MSNBC is going another way, but they're leading an audience in a certain direction, and that's why they have so many followers.
Yeah,
That's right. I mean, Fox is leading a very particular conversation.
Right.
CNN is leading a very particular conversation. Is it right? That depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Right. But the important thing, though, is that they're leading it.
Sure.
The Washington Post is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And
that's why people have problem with journalism in general, though, because it's like there's nobody that's just sharing the story. But the problem is if you just share the story, then people aren't engaged.
That's right. And so, like you said, if it bleeds, it leads, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. And so remember that that's what you're doing as well. And that's why I say the selfies and the practice videos, I mean, you just highlighted for me, you just illustrated for me why the selfies and the practice videos don't work. Because it's vanilla. No one cares. And I really do mean nobody cares. You are insignificant. You need to recognize how insignificant you are when all you're posting is selfies and it just doesn't matter.
But I wonder if there's a way that it's just missing a link. It's kind of like sharing that story, but not forming the connection with it.
Okay, I'll give you an example of someone who I think does it well, but I think there's another component, excuse me, and I think Eileen will help with this. Peter, what's the Michael Jackson pianist guy? Peter Bence.
Yeah, Peter Bence.
So he puts all these videos out, and it's him just playing, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
But he has this unique thing where he's transcribed these entire Michael Jackson pieces.
Actually, he hasn't transcribed it. He's arranged it.
He's arranged it. Right, exactly. He arranged it. He arranged it. He didn't transcribe it. So, so that's individual. He's the only person doing that arrangement because he created the arrangement. And then he's doing all these other things that are unique. I mean, it's not just a practice video of someone playing Bach or Beethoven.
Yeah, he's arranging, and he'll even show you videos of while he's arranging, like, he'll even show you the process of arranging, and it takes him forever to come up with an arrangement. It really does. And he comes up with, Coldplay and all these different, popular songs and artists. Pop artists, and he creates arrangements, and it takes him forever to come up with these.
But he's recently been writing originals too, so he got the audience
he's been writing originals
by doing that, and now he's showing.
He got the audience. Yes, exactly. Yeah. He got the audience by doing the arrangements, but now he's doing his originals, and everybody loves Peter Bence, and so now everybody loves Peter Bence, whether he's arranging for, somebody else or just writing stuff for himself. So he gathered an audience one way, and he's evolving another way. And taking that audience with him. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that I was thinking about recently was actually, I think, Tracy, you shared it, the Esperanza Spalding project coming up.
Yeah.
With that being an example also of how to engage in a way that's not just sharing a video. So just to give a little background of what she actually is doing, in a couple of days, she's Facebook Living a recording session for 3 days where she's going into it. Nothing has been rehearsed. Nothing's even been organized in terms of what's going to be recorded on this album. But she's selling like a limited number of albums, like 1,000 or something like that.
That's so
albums.
Freaking smart. I mean, that's just that's genius of another level right there.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said on my page.
It's not just sharing the Facebook Live feed, and leaving it at just that. She's completing it with that engagement of see what happens in the end and be a part of it. Have your copy of it too.
And this is limited.
Right,
you can't
brilliant.
After these CDs run out or records, she's also making LPs. Once they run out, it's gone. The performance is gone. It was a moment in time. I think it's so cool.
And it's kind of like, in a way, you're part of it because of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can feel a part of it. Exactly. So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, another example might be, if you've got a, epic performance coming up and you letting people in on your process of preparing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's interesting. But what's interesting is not the practicing. What's interesting is the story about the preparation for the thing that's coming up.
Yeah.
That's the story. You need to recognize that story is what works.
Right.
It's got to be part of a narrative. I'm just going to keep saying it. You're going to be so sick of the word narrative by the time we're done here. The whole thing is about narrative. It's all about the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not about practicing.
Right. I just wonder if there's still another part that could also be added on with engagement. Because, you can have the narrative, but then I think people also want to feel like they want to be a part of that narrative. And so when you're talking about,
because you're sharing it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the topic. Because, like, for example, you were saying with coffee, that's something that everybody can relate to. So by the nature of that topic, they feel like they're already a part of it.
Yeah.
But if it's just practicing, sure, that in itself is not going to sell. But I wonder if there's a way to make it like Esperanza Spalding's doing, kind of. That's essentially a video of her practicing, but she's making it engaging because she's like, be a witness of it, be a part of this unknown creative process. It's like there's some other connection there that
the connection is that this is actually a performance. She's prepared for the performance. I don't know if you watch any of the videos, but she has been preparing for this session, even though none of the music that she's been practicing will be played at the session. She's just preparing like her kind of improv chops, I think. And then she's going to improvise that whole time and create a unique product at the end, which is limited and you won't be able to get it ever again. So I don't think it's like
probably practicing improvising is what she's doing. Like that's my guess is what she's doing is she's going in the practice room and challenging herself to come up with a new riff for this particular, like she's probably practicing on demand riffs or whatever, right?
Yeah, and she's not sharing the practice videos. She's sharing videos about her practice videos. Like not videos, but she's sharing about that she's doing that to promote the thing that's coming up that she wants you to come do and come by.
It's a form of documenting, and that's what you need to understand, Kyle, is that documenting makes people feel a part of your process. It just does. So I think you're overthinking this.
Yeah.
I think you're just way overthinking it. Because documenting your process is making people feel a part of it.
Think about, I know this is going to sound like a stupid example, but think about The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, right? Like you totally, by the end of that show, you feel like you know those people and you almost feel like you're a part of the process of that Bachelor
and you're totally rooting for someone to win or not or whatever.
Right. And you
like you're on somebody's side.
Yeah.
You've taken a side. By the time that show is over, I mean, I don't watch it, but I used to. And by the time that show is over, you're taking a side.
Yeah. You're totally entrenched in that story. I watched several seasons back in the early 2000s.
I watched like 2 seasons total, but every time, both seasons I watched, I know I was completely I was team Allie or whatever. Right. I was like, you know what I mean? I was team whoever.
Yeah.
The person was.
And it was an event. Like I would get my wine and I would sit down and don't anyone bother me for the next hour.
Cut up some cheese and crackers and have a seat.
Yep.
Yeah.
belly up to the couch.
Right.
Totally. But I mean, I just want you to know, part of people being engaged is you documenting and sharing what's going, what you're preparing for or what you're doing. It's not the practice they're interested in. It's the story behind it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have a feeling that's what's so interesting about, what's her name, Esperanza? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Esperanza Spalding.
I have a feeling that's what's so interesting about her. She's letting you in on the preparation for it. And everybody's like, oh, it's happening soon. Holy cow. Like everybody can't wait until it happens. And that's, by the way, why you got interested in the McGregor-Mayweather fight, because you got entrenched in the process leading up to. You got It's the documenting. You got engaged in it. It wasn't even your choice to get engaged in it. You couldn't help yourself.
Right.
Right? That's what I mean is I don't want you to overthink this. It really is that simple.
Yeah.
People love stories and they want to be part of a narrative, and just watching you is them being part of that narrative. I mean, I feel like Ben, the deer, is my child and I've never even seen him in person. Right? Like I have a vested interest in what happens to Ben, and I don't even live, like they live in Pennsylvania. I've never even met them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You just got to know, like, that's the human condition. We get so invested in other people's stories and what's happening, and you do.
Yeah. There are people I follow that I feel like if I met them, I would feel like I already knew them.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could talk about everything that's happened to them in the last year.
Yeah.
Sure.
Everything, including all the stuff they sold and Debo Does America and all that whole thing. And so really, I mean, that's what I think the value is of social media, is that.
Yeah. Interesting.
So good. So now are you clear what to do?
Yeah, I think this is very, very telling. And I think part of what I have to work through is, number one, being able to determine what is a story, like, or determine that there is a story, that I just have to realize that. And number two, that there can be engagement from that as well. Like that it's not just about sharing a story and calling it a day, but then following up and in making it a recurring theme. So for example, the coffee shop story.
I mean, if you find you get response from it, if you find you get response, because a lot of times what drives a narrative is who responded.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's part of what drives a narrative. The other thing I want to modify your first takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
You said I need to work through. I'm going to advise you to stop working through and just start doing through. Because you like to overthink.
Right. I mean, because
you got to be careful of that. You got to watch that of yourself.
One is so like apprehensive about making a mistake or writing something that's gonna, come back to bite you or something like that. That's part of the reason.
That's part of your that's all that's your whole thing. I have to control the perception thing that you have going on.
Right.
Yeah. And by the way, you will post things that upset people.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And you will get people who don't like it. I mean, Tracy posted, it was hilarious. Tracy posted we were talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
I think it was last year, or maybe it was earlier this year. Tracy posted a post, and she put an image of a middle finger.
Mm-hmm.
And it got reported to Facebook. Okay, and it was actually a professor who, and of course Facebook went back to them and said, actually, I know you think this is offensive, but she's allowed to post this.
Yeah.
So if you find it offensive, just hide it from your feed. And that person ended up unliking our page and not following us anymore. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. But
it was a cartoon drawing of a middle finger too. It wasn't even a real
drawing. It wasn't even. And I mean, it was great. I mean, it was actually a really good post that she put up. But we got that. You're going to get that. You're going to have people, because there are some people who are walking through life waiting to be offended.
Let me tell you though, when that happened, it freaked me out, honestly.
Yeah, she had a little mini meltdown.
I had a mild coronary, and I think we were either talking or texting, and we were texting, and you were yammering about something, maybe Benjamin. No, just kidding. And I was like, hold it. I have to change the subject right now. I just got this message.
She was freaking out.
Yeah, it was like, I mean, and I knew, I could see that the message, what he did was he sent me an image, a screenshot of the message he got back from Facebook. So I read it, and it said exactly what you just said, that it's not a problem, and if you don't like it, you can just unfollow it. And I was like, so are you trying to tell me that you reported me to Facebook over this? Like, it was so confusing. And then I was just, it was weird. Yeah, it was weird.
And that's going to happen. Like, people are going to do that. They're going to unlike your page. They're going to report posts. They're going to there's all kinds of things that are going to happen. And your job is not to please. Your job is to lead.
Right.
You just got to get what your job is. Your job is to lead, not please. That's your job.
Right.
And you just got to be really clear on that's what your job is.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we have to deal with this every day here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
We don't get to escape it any more than you do.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
I think you got a great topic though.
I do too. I think it's awesome, Kyle.
I really like the idea of leading. So that really speaks to me a lot. And I think I'm gonna really focus on trying to get more engaged in that way. At least when it comes to like social justice / political things, rather than trying to take a stance. Like,
it's not your job. It's not your job to take a stance, really. That you can do that in your playing and your art.
Yes.
You can do that in your performance art, just like you're telling other people to do. Your job is to lead a conversation for that they should do that.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Make sense?
Yeah, and that's the part that speaks to me most.
It simplifies it, doesn't it? I think it really simplifies it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going to get real value out of this talk that we had today. I know that, everyone, I'm sure I'm going to get messages about how can I see stories about Benjamin the deer. At least I'm hoping I get those. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, I think this was a really valuable talk, and I hope everybody gets a ton of value out of it. I think it's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, I really appreciate it as well. I think that it's given me a lot to start to go on and think about and actually implement as well,
Yep.
because it's so easy to talk about these things, but
Mhm.
it's like you're saying, like you just kind of have to jump into it and do it. And of course, the more you do it, the more you see the response, which hopefully kind of starts to drive itself in some ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we actually learned a lot about this in the last 3 months ourselves. Like we ran a little experiment for ourselves almost with all the different things we tried, and we learned a ton from it. I mean,
Yeah.
just a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to end up sharing that here in September. We're going to end up sharing that in September. We're actually going to open up and talk about what we've learned.
Mm-hmm.
We're not. I wouldn't call us. We don't have it licked. We don't have the formula. Not going to say we do. I mean, we don't. But there's some things we figured out.
Yeah.
I'm going to say
Yeah.
there's some really important things we figured out. So we're going to talk a lot about that in September. So definitely keep your eye on our page, and definitely friend Tracy and watch what we're doing, because I think you're going to gain a lot just from watching what we're doing, because a lot of what I talk about is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for being on today. Really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to this one coming out. I know it's going to be really valuable to everybody.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on with this issue, because it's so relevant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening today. Hey, listen, I have a huge favor to ask you, and it will only take a few seconds. If you like this show, one way that you can let us know is by writing a review on iTunes and subscribing to the podcast. Writing a review will help other people find the podcast and help us immensely. It will only take a few minutes. Just head over to iTunes and search for Crushing Classical. There you can write a review and click subscribe. Thanks again.